You're listening to the No BS Bishop podcast. We're alive to love, and all other values are potential BS. Now here's your host, Bishop Randy Dean.
Hello, and welcome everybody. I'm Bishop Randy Dean. I'm so honored that you would choose to give me a half an hour of your life and time. I'm here to present to you Alive to Love. I believe lesser values easily devolve into BS, and I want nothing to do with BS, nothing to do with pulling people in with something that I really don't mean. Love alone is the connection I want to make with people, and I trust that you've come here because you've learned somehow or another. If you've been here before, you've learned somehow or another to trust that I'm not going to BS you. But if you're not a repeat listener, hey, come on in, pull up a chair, get a cup of coffee. Let me give you some thoughts about what I see in the big wide world as it relates to the United States of America and spirituality. It's a passionate theme for me in the past decade or more. And what I want to talk to you about is a term that I've come to call spiritual refugees. These are people I dearly love. So it powerfully relates to the theme of this podcast. So I think I've got some things to say of given myself full time, essentially, in the last decade to reaching out to spiritual refugees. Jesus said they were the one who left the 100 in the flock. And Jesus said the shepherd went out looking for that one. I'm just one shepherd, and I've been out looking for those of the one out of the 100. We'll give some ideas and thoughts about that in a moment. But first, here on the No BS Bishop, I present to you a couple of things every time we come here on the front end and the back end. First of all, I want to share with you Love's Creed, something I wrote about a decade ago for my own personal growth and as a New Year's resolution. I'll read that for you and I'll have you repeat after me with that. And then right after that, I'd like to lead you in the Lord's Prayer, okay? So here's Love's Creed. I'll read it in total, and I want to go back, read it in portions like a vow at a wedding altar, and I'm going to ask you to repeat after me if you are so inclined. I think it's valuable. I think it's helpful. I think it's something that gives us an anchor and moors us tightly to a sound notions of love. Here we go. I'm alive to love. I am not on this earth for hate. I'm alive for love. I'm not breathing, eating, and sleeping to regain energy for causing pain. I am alive with plans, dreams, and designs locked into anything and everything that is love. I am unavailable for anything less than love. All right, now let's go back, and I want to repeat it, short bursts, and you share it back for your own hearing, all right? Just a matter of connecting to these words, and hopefully they do something good for you foundationally. Here we go. I'm alive to love. I am not on this earth for hate. I'm alive for love. I'm not breathing, eating, and sleeping to regain energy for causing pain. I am alive with plans, dreams, and designs, locked into anything and everything that is love. I am unavailable for anything less than love. All right, there you have it. Love's Creed, my own. I've authored that myself. If you'd like a copy, shoot me an email, randydeanministries@gmail.com. Randy Dean Ministries, all one word, all lowercase. Be happy to send you that creed. Now to the Lord's Prayer, most prayed prayer in human history, a valued paragraph that really summarizes so much of what our praying and life could and should be about. So if you know it, say it with me. If you don't, just listen in and let it wash over you. If you've heard it before, hopefully it'll be authentic enough from my voice. But if you have never heard it, or if you've heard it kind of in the background noise, tune in for just a few moments as we pray the wisdom of Jesus when he taught us to say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Yes, yes, yes. Valuable truth right there from the heart and the mind of Christ. And I trust that you'll find some place in there that you can hang on to it, even for today, as a piece of your meditation through the day. Well, I've chosen for today's subject to talk to you about love and spiritual refugees. Again, if you weren't here at the very start, spiritual refugees are the 45 plus million people here in the United States of America who have exited the brick and mortar of places of faith. That's Protestant, Lutheran, some Jewish expressions, some Islamic expressions, whatever the case may be. Formal expressions of religion in America are dropping like a rock dropped from the top of the Empire State Building. It's just falling hard. Last time I looked, about 4,000 to 7,000 places of worship here in the United States. Over the last decade, 4,000 to 7,000 places have closed. They're done. They've shuttered the doors. And again, that's at least 45 million people have just simply quit the brick and mortar of religious expressions. And that's over the past 25 years or so. But here's the stunning statistic that comes from a variety of sources. 75% of people in the United States of America still claim spirituality. That's enormous. Now, I can tell you I started as a pastor. I call myself a puppy pastor at the time. I was 19. I was still in college, my undergraduate studies. And that's where I first started doing what I'm doing still to this day as a pastor. So from that point forward through 2019, the first day of 2019, my wife and I, in a leap of faith, stepped away from the organized church into the, I almost said abyss. No, it's no abyss. It's been a moment or two that it felt like an abyss. It's like a free fall, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, because on the first day of 2019, we stepped out and went after with love in our hearts. That's the theme of No BS Bishop. Love. With love in our hearts, to hear the people of those 45 million folks who have walked from church, to hear their stories, to love and to listen. Someone asked me early in that journey if we would, as we heard their stories, if we would not then recommend churches or synagogues or other places they could go to reconnect to organized religion. Our answer then was a flat out no. Oh, hell no. But at this point, it's even more so. No, capital N-O. And it's not because there aren't some places somewhere that we could refer people to. The problem is there is so much religious trauma attached to these stories that we've heard. By the dozens, the scores, the hundreds. And in person and by other means of research, the spiritual refugees in the United States of America have been widely traumatized to such a degree that to give some kind of blanketed permission to go back is to lose their trust. And so we won't do it. My wife and I have resisted that temptation. and we just won't do it. Now, if people choose to go back of their own volition, their own research, fine. That's amazing. That took a lot of courage to go back. But our role isn't to get people back into the brick and mortar of religious institutions. Our role is to love and to listen. To love and listen. So when I talk about the story of the Good Shepherd that Jesus said in John 10, he was talking about that one sheep that was lost on the 99 and wasn't going to hang out with them. But what does that Good Shepherd do? That Good Shepherd doesn't shame that one, doesn't beat that one, doesn't thrash that one. It says in John 10, Jesus lovingly puts that lamb upon his shoulders, bears their burden. So in that process, my wife and I have learned to bear their burdens. Hear their stories, bear their burdens. Hear their stories, bear their burdens. And in so many ways, our lives are forever changed. I don't even have time here to begin to list those ways. One thing that I know, when we first started this journey, I got a part-time job delivering food to senior citizens. About 700 boxes went to an 8-county-wide area here in western Wisconsin. And what I discovered from that, while it was unintentional when I took that job, it was just for personal support. What I discovered was I was meeting Jesus in the faces of 700 plus senior citizens over a 10-day period of time, and in each month, 10 days to 2 weeks it would take to get those boxes packed and delivered. My soul was changing profoundly. My mind was growing. I didn't expect to be so impacted that it would re-energize me in my calling. I just knew I was following my calling. I was being very connected to my calling. But I found my calling growing, my own personal calling as a pastor and a bishop and a church leader. And then the freedom I felt. Oh, boy, let me talk to you about that. The freedom I felt where I didn't have budgets and boards to juggle and manage was the freedom that I knew on some level, in a different way, that spiritual refugees were feeling, where they're not being pressured by budgets and boards. So the budgetary thing comes in, and where if the church is struggling, and by the way, multitude of churches, in particular churches, now this applies to religious organizations beyond the church, but just in this context, people sitting in the pews, they feel that push, that crunch of budgets that aren't being met. Now, you may, church leaders might say, well, we've never put pressure on people. I got bad news for you. The fact that you're trying to make your organization survive the storm of the exit of the mass exodus of people leaving church, and you're trying to squeeze a few extra dollars of the remaining folks, there's some religious trauma going on there, and that needs to be addressed. Now, another layer in this whole thing that gets a little more obvious is, and I've known this for decades, and that is that church leadership and religious leaders are in crisis. And now there's two fronts to that. The leaders of religious groups are exhausted. They're getting underpaid and overused and abused to try to keep an organization alive that maybe that organization just needs to sink. Its time has come and gone. And so leaders have been exhausted. Leaders have been fried. We've called it burnout. We've called it I need a sabbatical. By the way, I needed a sabbatical when the first day of 2019 came along. I had never had an extended sabbatical. I needed it as much as I needed my next meal. I never got one to that degree. And leaders have paid a significant and bloody price to try to keep that ship of religion afloat. And all around them, the signs were evident, and boards and budgets around them were screaming bloody murder at those leaders. Excuse me, I got to sneeze. Hang on. So when I look at this, the leadership crisis in religious organizations is two fronts. Exhausted leaders. But on the other front, and some of this can be attributed to exhausted leaders, leaders are morally dropping like flies. The moral failures, the explicit moral failures of sexual abuse of children, and the power differential of a male pastor taking advantage of a female parishioner or a female coworker. The stories are legion. They're in the thousands all over our country here in the United States. The stories they're undeniable. I've been a part of a group that was nationwide, and the expression where there's smoke, there's fire. Well, my wife and I were choking on the smoke from this particular organization until finally there was no denying, baby, there's a fire in the middle of this thing, and it's serious leadership failure. Now, why are 45 million people walking away from religious institutions? Well, you just heard it. Either leaders are exhausted and they're underpaid and understaffed and undersupported, and they're trying to rise to the occasion and re-energize or bring revival, whatever the terminology might be. They've found themselves rearranging the deck furniture on a sinking Titanic, and it's exhausting. But on the other side, when leaders have morally collapsed, well, the loss of trust is, speaking of Titanic, the loss of trust is titanic, beyond measure. So that's why millions upon millions upon millions of United States citizens have said, I just am not going to throw my life into that anymore. So that's one of the layers. Another problem we've faced. Now, remember, I'm talking about here how these institutions of religion have been and need to be known as people and purposes of love, with no other BS attached to it, just love, 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 love. And yet, boards and budgets and getting a pail of water to bail out Titanic while she sinks. And love has been lost. And that's why when my wife and I left 2019, we said, we're just going to go love and listen. And let me tell you that the listening is a PhD. So on that level, religious organizations in the United States of America are not diverse. They're racially segregated. One of the most segregated hours in America is in Sunday mornings. They're exclusionary. So if you don't dress the right way, if you don't talk the right way, if you it's not just racially exclusionary, it's gender exclusionary. You may, on a soft side of that, soft, maybe a bad way to put it, but it's male dominated, it's patriarchal. Ladies are invited to bake cookies and clean the kitchen and keep the nursery, but they're not invited to leadership or, God forbid, to get up there and speak Sunday after Sunday or other means. So there's the gender exclusionary thing. Well, guess what? America, the United States has no longer should be no longer exclusionary in a patriarchal sense, but churches have been over the top patriarchal. And religious groups have been over the top patriarchal. And we are way overdue for just that side of the exclusionary gender role. But on the other end of this, when in the last 20, 30 years, as the LGBTQ community has stepped up to say, we're here, we're not going anywhere, you can play like we're not here, but we're here. Somebody once asked me, said, why all of a sudden do they have these people shown up? And my answer is this, and my answer to you is this. They have been here all along. They didn't just suddenly show up. They're now finding their voice. They have now found a way to speak up. Now, to be certain, many people from that community have walked away from religious organizations because religious organizations just absolutely refuse to have any conversation there. And then on the other side of that, when it comes to being trusted, the lack of trust is absolutely stark, raving, crucifying, and painful. So, I don't have time to fully develop that right now, but I'm just telling you that as our society has gotten more honest and open, authentic about who we are, what our backgrounds are, here we are. You change or die. And so many ways, religious institutions in the United States have not changed the needle toward love. We've changed the needle toward more exclusionary tactics, which ends up being a death knell to our religious organizations. So, and to that end, I don't have quick answers that I can give you here in a half an hour period of time. By the way, I've got about 10 minutes right now. But I'm here to give you why love must be restored as our statement of faith. A church or a synagogue or a other religious organization website would do well to brave their statement of faith and truth and what we believe by saying we have one word and we are willing to be tested on this word. And that word is love. We are here to love and to listen. I'm pretty sure that tailspin of 45 million people departing religious organizations in the United States, that if on some tsunami level we were courageous enough to say clearly and honestly, we're here to love, we would turn that downfall around. If love was genuinely our creed, if love was the only reason why we say, we aren't here for any other purpose. And by the way, perfect love casts out fear. So if love was our creed and love was our practice and love was the action, I'm pretty sure our doors would be knocked down for the returnees. I'm not even sure we need doors anymore in the physical and the metaphorical sense. Physically, of course, but metaphorically, what are we doing with doors to keep people out? When it's clear that Jesus said, whosoever will, let them come to me. Let them come. Let them come. It's important for us to understand that there was a lot of weird whosoevers in Jesus' days. There was a lot of outliers in the whosoever category in Jesus' day. It's not like suddenly here in the 21st century we've discovered a variety of expressions and lives and who people are, personalities, etc. No, Jesus had plenty of that and probably more. If you want a little short history lesson, look up Greek and Roman culture as it relates to same-sex behaviors. Those folks were... History will note that the Roman culture made orgies a high-level historical asterisk and fact. I'll just leave that there because I do not have time right now to develop it. This podcast is going to be 2 parts. I promise you that. So I'm going to come back to this next time. But our websites could have in all bold, all italicized, here's our belief system. Love. That's it. And we're going to dare the waves and the angry religious folks. And by the way, the religious folks will rise and throw stones and yell and scream and holler like they did to Jesus. And eventually they'll crucify some of us, metaphorically. But Jesus did say, take up your cross and follow me. I got to share one last story here before I close with my regular closing. My brother, as so many of you know if you've listened, my brother died by suicide 8 years ago. And long prior to that, many years ago, when I first started off in ministry, one of the first things he said to me about my faith and his relationship to me, he said, so you want me to go to church? He said, and he was honest at the time. This is, it's a solid 40 years ago. He said, you want me to go to church? And look at me. I'm a problem on two legs. I have problems over my head. I'm drowning in my own problems. And he certainly was. He'd been married 5 times and 2 children that disowned him, and he disowned them, a grandchild he never met. So that's a summary. He said, you want me to go to church and inherit the problems of the church. And here's what he was talking about. Churches fighting one another. My church is right, that church is wrong. Just recently, somebody here in the neighborhood around here in western Wisconsin publicly called out another church by saying their belief systems are heresy, our belief systems are solid rock. And they said that not just in a hallway conversation. They said that in their setting, in their business setting or worship setting, wherever it was. They said it for all to hear. Now, people like my brother would say, you want me to come back to that. Here I am with a busload of problems. Here I am with more problems than I can conquer in my life, and you want me to come to church and take on your problems. No thanks. That's a fair summary of here what I'm saying about spiritual refugees. My brother was one. He died as a spiritual refugee. Now, I'm here with a half a century of pastoral ministry to say to the spiritual refugees, I'll love you and I'll listen. And I promise you, you will get no advice from me unless you specifically ask for that advice. Uninvited advice is the worst kind of advice, and in fact, it is no advice when it's offered in an uninvited sense. All right, got to bring this plane in for a landing. We'll do this part 2 next week. So, I want you to join me in breathing. Yeah, that's a spiritual practice, breathing, especially if you can tune in to how deep your breath can be. On the count of 3, take the deepest breath you can and hold it for just a second or 2. 1, 2, 3. Inhale. And exhale. That spiritual practice gets you in touch with the rhythms of your body and relaxes you, lowers your blood pressure, slows your pace down, and gives you space to live. Another thing I ask people to do here is to join me in a practice that, what if all religious organizations just did this? With every meeting, inviting one another to say the 3 most magical, charmed, and holy words in the human language. Say it with intentional eye contact and a calm, non-threatening stance. Say, I love you. I'd suggest that most of our religious organizations would have to train the gathering how to do that, because we're really not in tune. Say, I love you to someone nearby right now. Look in the mirror and say, hey, you, I love you. All right, remember, biggest mistake we make is thinking we still have time. I'm telling you, let's be present, be kind, love more, and love now. Bishop Randy Dean here to the No BS Bishop, and I appreciate this half an hour of your life and time. Happy trails, y'all.
Thanks for listening to the No BS Bishop podcast. If you like the show, leave a comment on it. Or, even better, share it with your friends. And we'll see you on the next one.